Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to another recommendation video. Also a favorite historicals of 2023 or 2022. Wow, sorry, we're not in 2023 yet. I wrote the wrong thing down on my list. But you know what was funny to me is that I had a lot of historicals that I loved this year, which is actually wonderful because I haven't been in the biggest historical mood lately. And that was proved to me by, I had a survey that was live for about a week that people filled out. And one of the things a good number of people asked for was more historical recs. And I was like, I do a good amount of historical recs. And I mean, I do try to throw historical recs into my, other rec videos that I'm filming. Obviously there's an arranged marriage or brother's best friend, like put those ones in. But when I looked, I haven't made like a dedicated historical video since the summer. So I was like, you know what? It's the perfect time. So I pulled out my list and I have all my like 4.5 and 5-star and 1 6-star historical romances from this year. But first we'll talk about one that I have talked about a lot. I've put it in a lot of videos and it is still going to be in another video for the year, so I don't need to say too much. And this was my first historical of the year. It was also my only 6-star historical of the year, and that is The Temptation of a Highlander by Elisa Braden. I actually just reread this book for my favorites of the year. I listened to the audiobook. The audiobooks for this series, because this is book 3 in the Midnight in Scotland series. You could just start with this one if you want to. I know people are going to ask, but you also could start with The Making of a Highlander, which is beautiful. And again, all the audiobooks are on AnyPlay. But this one is kind of sort of a marriage of convenience, kind of a bodyguard. It's a bunch of things. Our heroine, Clarissa, is being hunted by her stalker, and he has done some bad things to scare her and to try to get her to be with him. And her grandmother are pretty scared and they don't have many places to turn. And so they reach out to her friend in Scotland and they decide to go and stay there. So I think that Kate is her friend. And Kate had married Broderick, and so she goes to stay there. And then when things start to get like this guy finds her there, she goes to stay with Campbell, who is one of the brothers who is pretty grumpy and reclusive, and she goes to stay with him at his like beaten down home, and she really kind of brings life back into his home, and it's really beautiful. So I absolutely adore this one. The content warning, like some of the bad stuff in this, is there is damage done to animals, and I say damage like some of it is imagined, like we're scared stuff happened, and some of it is like animals dying and animals in danger, because this guy is a stalker and a psycho, and he uses animals to kind of torture our heroine a little bit. So I just want to warn you about that. It's not overly like graphic things, but if you're sensitive to animals like me, like be prepared for that. Then we have an author who has really been going around lately, and I love it. So Yours Until Dawn by Teresa Medeiros. I had read one of her books before for Rake Appreciation Society, one of her like vampire historicals. And then I was invited to Historical Hellions did Whisper of Roses, which I did also really like. And on that live show, I was told about Yours Until Dawn, which was like a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The hero is blind. He was a naval captain who got injured, and our heroine, her name is Samantha Wickersham, and she gets sent to kind of be his like nurse slash like helper to like get him back on track. And there are twists and turns in this book, but it's mostly like a grumpy blind hero who has just like stopped taking care of himself, and his staff really reminded me of the Beauty and the Beast, like Cogsworth and like Mrs. Potts. Like they're definitely those vibes coming from his staff, and so that made me extremely happy. So I enjoyed this so much, and for this only being my 3rd Teresa Medeiros, I own so many more of her books and I want to read more because this book just really got to me. It was really beautiful, it was funny, it was clever, it was great. I have The Bride Goes Rogue by Joanna Shupe, and this was one of the first times that Joanna Shupe has showed up on a favorites list, but this is one so many of my friends love. This is book 3 in the Fifth Avenue Rebels. I didn't read book 1, I read book 2, and I mostly liked it. And then I read this one, which our heroine, Catherine, she believes that she's supposed to be married to Preston Clark because there was a betrothal agreement made between their fathers. Preston is like, no way in hell, I'm the man in charge now, and my father is not deciding who I was going to marry. And so she's very upset because she's literally waited all this time to marry him and become his wife, and he basically snubs his nose at her. And so she says, you know what? I'm going to do what I want. And so she goes to this masquerade party where she ends up having a like passionate night with him and doesn't know who it is. And, you know, when they both find out who it is, you know, he thinks, oh, is she trying to like trap me into a marriage? Like I wouldn't do it. And she's just like, wow, he made me feel a lot of funny feelings, and I liked that. So I don't know, this was great. The covers for the series are fantastic. I actually have The Duke Goes Down is on my most anticipated of 2023 because I had a great time with this, and there's this third act conflict that is frustrating, but it also made sense because of the road that led us here. You know, like the road that led us here, it's the kind of conflict that we were going to have, you know, and it had to happen. But I understand why people loved this. This was steamy. It was fun, and I love the cast of characters in here. Then we actually have a couple indie romances to recommend, and this was one that showed up there is a Facebook group that I adore, which is called Upturned Petticoats and Undone Cravats, and it's only for historical romances that are 3 chili peppers or more, and I just really love that. And this one was a new release, and I couldn't wait to try it. And so it was called Letters to Dogwood, and it's by Tanya Fisher, and this one is a Western, and our heroine is running away from home. She hasn't been treated well. Her mother hates her, and she wants to go be with her father. Her parents are, I don't even know if they were ever together. I can't remember, but they're not together now. And her father like owns a hotel in this small town. And so she had written like letters back and forth with her father, and she decides to run away and go be with her dad and help him run this hotel. Well, it turns out her father has kind of been lying in his letters about how things have been going. And he's actually about to lose the hotel because he's in debt and things aren't going well. And also on her way there, she's taking the train, and her mother is trying to get her back. So she has sent out these telegrams and has put like a bounty on her basically to get her home. And so she ends up connecting with this guy who's also traveling on the train, and they end up pretending to be married so that she doesn't get like caught and like brought home basically. And then when they get there, he actually doesn't live that, like, I mean, he lives a little ways away, but doesn't live that far from where she is. And they write letters back and forth, and like he's trying to set up his ranch and like get everything going, and she's really struggling to, kind of fix the mess that her father got her in. So I really did enjoy this one, especially for like a first outing, and I really love these two together, and this was pretty steamy and fun. It's a slow burn to that, but the sexual tension was really great leading up to it, and how things like work out between them, I really loved. Also then, this one is a paranormal historical. It's also indie. I've talked about this one quite a few times. I'm obsessed. I cannot wait for the next book in this series, and that is The Oath by Jillian Bondarchuk. This is actually book 2 in the Grey Court Chronicles. You probably should read The Shield and the Thistle first, because The Oath is a direct, a direct effect of what happens at the end of that book, and a promise, an oath that our hero Malcolm makes. And he makes a promise to Cora's mother, Venora, who is a witch, and like actual a witch, and she makes him swear an oath that he will marry her daughter and protect her from witch hunters, because her daughter has actually been like put on the stake before when she was young. And so in the beginning of this book, our hero has really put off going to find the heroine, because he is very reluctant to carry this out. He doesn't know if the oath he made, like what he exchanged for it, he doesn't know if it's come true, which again, I can't explain without spoiling what happened in the other one, but he made an oath to help someone else, and he doesn't know if it worked. So he doesn't know if he wants to do this, but the witch, the oath she put on him, if he doesn't find this woman and marry her and bring her home, he will die. Literally, the oath will kill him if he doesn't. So he waits literally as long as he can, and he literally ends up collapsing a ways away from Cora's home, and she's basically starving to death. She has been in hiding, and she's all alone, and she hears a commotion out there, and she finds him, and she brings him in to care for him, and then she finds out what her mother did, and she's just baffled that her mother did this, but also she doesn't have anything else. Again, she's literally starving to death in the woods alone, and so he brings her back, and in exchange for her safety, she really helps this small clan to flourish. And using her gifts, her witchy powers, she really helps this place flourish. And I loved that. And there is some other paranormal elements. There's more that this oath means that I won't spoil for you, but I adored this book. And I think the author did a wonderful job. And again, the first one, The Shield and the Thistle, gave me a lot of Outlander vibes and was her first book. And this is the second one. Loved it. All right, then I actually have 2 books by Courtney Milan to share. So one of them is The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan. I listened to the audio for this one. I really, really enjoyed it. I've read some other Courtney Milan before as well. This one is the lightest one of hers that I've read. It was very sweet. It was a friends to lovers. Obviously, it is a very diverse story too. And we have our, the one Chinese duke in the area. So there's the Duke of Lansing, who is Jeremy Wentworth, and he has returned again and again to this tiny village to woo Chloe, who she's actually a couple years older than him, and he's actually kind of shy, so it's taken him a couple years to get up the courage, and he actually hasn't been back in a couple of years because he's been too nervous. And he also has never told her that she's a duke, even though most of the people in town know. He thinks it's a secret, so he's been nervous to out his secret, even though everybody else knows. But this is really cute. There's also her and her father. Her father has this special recipe that has been stolen, so they're kind of kept almost in a gentle poverty because of this that's been stolen from him. But I loved this. This is such a sweet story. And also this cover, you have to have this book for this cover alone. It's divine. And the other Courtney Milan is completely the opposite. It is so angsty and just will hurt your guts. But we read this. We read Proof of Seduction for Rape Appreciation Society, and this is actually her very first book that she put out with Harlequin, and this one is about a what's it called? A fortune teller. Yeah, her name is Jenny, and she is a sophisticated skeptic. Wait. Jenny can make even the most sophisticated skeptic believe her predictions. And so then she meets Gareth Carhart, who is the Marquis of Blakely, and he is a scientist and a bachelor, and I think it's his cousin, he's fallen under Madame Esmeralda's sway. But the thing is, she actually saved him from unaliving himself. He didn't want to live anymore. He felt like he was a spoiled, no good, didn't have really any friends. And he went to see Madame Esmeralda, and she could see he was in a desperate place. So she made up this prophecy about him, almost, saying I see your future, and it's this and this, and it gives him hope to live. So it's this very interesting scenario, and it's something we talk about in the book. Is what she does really bad if it can give hope to people who, most of them are wealthy people who will pour their money away anyway, and she can give them, even if it's a false hope, it's making them feel good. So is it really bad? And there's also part of it that Jenny, she's very much been downtrodden and like mistreated when she was young, and so she sees this as a way to kind of like get back at the upper class a little bit by like taking their money and giving them this. So she is, you know, a trickster in a way, but she's doing what she has to do to survive, and it was literally either be a prostitute or a, you know, mistress, or do this. And like, why, like, they both are exchanging money for like pleasure in a way, right? She's like giving people joy by what she does, and then, you know, or she could be someone's mistress. Like, what's really so bad? And like, so that's kind of a debate that her and Gareth have. Now, this is one that Gareth, he's very much attracted to her. He wants to make her his mistress, but he also wants to prove that she's a liar. And he thinks that by proving she's a liar will make her want to fall into bed with him. Not quite sure. Gareth is very dumb for a lot of this book, you guys, okay? But I mean, he's smart, but he's dumb. However, this book had a shocking turnaround for me with how he grovels and what he does at the end of this book, okay? Okay? And if you watch the live show on Crystal's channel where we talked about this book, you will see that we both were like not gonna give this a super high rating until the very end. And that doesn't usually happen for me, okay? And if this hadn't have been a book club book, I probably wouldn't have read it to the end, but I was pretty blown away by it, and I really, really liked it. There's also an audiobook for this if you want to listen to that. Yeah, and I recommend you give it a try. Like, give it a try and see if it works for you, but remember that you may want to strangle this man until the very end, but I'm just asking, give him a try. Then we have A Momentary Marriage by Candace Camp. This was book 2 in the, the DeVere family, but there's only like 2 in this. And this was only my second like Candace Camp. I read the first one like earlier this year, and like it was just okay. And then I had just wanted to read another in the series, and the premise of this was just, I was really into it, and this one was great. So this one is a marriage of convenience. And James DeVere has been very sick. So he was a friend of Laura's father, who was a brilliant physician. And what happened? Were they friends? Okay, what's it? Sorry, it's been a while. But now he faces death, and he turns to Laura for help. And she's a woman he hurt before. Oh, that's right. That's right. Because like, I think Laura loved his brother at one point. And he like made it like not happen. So I think that's what it is. But then, yeah, she had a brilliant physician father. And so he has died already. Oh yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. It's been a while. Her father has died, but he like goes to try and meet her dad, and he comes across her when like the guy who's like has all of her father's wealth now, his heir, is basically like kicking her out of her home and all of these things. And since James believes he's going to die soon, and he also doesn't want his family to just all get his money. He thinks they'll be wasteful with it, or most of them will. So he makes an offer of marriage. So like, she'll inherit his estate and his relatives won't get it, and like, he's gonna die. So she doesn't like him, but like, you don't have to be around me. I'm gonna die. Well, then neither of them are prepared for the feelings that start, because she's not spending a ton of time with him. But, you know, when he's sick, like, they have some very honest conversations. She gets to know more of like why he had like hurt her years before, and like what was going on when that happened. And, you know, as they start to fall in love, he's like, well, I'm gonna die. But spoiler alert, he doesn't die. And the way that he doesn't die was amazing. Like, I just thought this was such a unique plot. I very much enjoyed this couple. I liked that it was kind of an adversaries being in this arranged marriage. Like, he's trying to do something good before he dies, right or wrong that he did. And also he thinks his family is a bunch of like poppycock. So he's just like, I don't want them to get anything, and I want to do this for you. So yeah, I just thought this was so unique, and it caused me to buy a lot of Candace Camp because I want to read more of her stuff. All right, then we have Phoebe by Minerva Spencer. This is her first book in the Bellamy sisters, and I can't wait to read more. This one is so shiny, so I'm going to put up a picture of Phoebe. Minerva Spencer, she's written Dangerous and Barbarous, and I really appreciate her books. This one, I got to read an arc of this, and it just really like hit me. So it gave me a lot of like Pride and Prejudice vibes mixed with like Jane Eyre, mixed with some other things. Like there was just so much mixed into this one. I've talked about this book a lot. But this one is like Lady Phoebe Bellamy. She's one of 5 sisters, and they do have a brother. So there's 6 of them, but the brother is the youngest one. And her family, they have to like sell off parts of their land. Like they are going into poverty. They're going to need to like leave their home and move to a smaller place in town, basically. And the hero in this one is, what's his first name? Paul. His name is Paul Needham, and he is a guy who like made his money. So North and South, that's the other one it reminded me of. It reminds me of these 3, like Pride and Prejudice, North and South, and Jane Eyre, and maybe you'll pick out on these elements. And so he moves in next door, and like he's went to the best schools, and he's made the most money, but his father had like made his money in trade. So he like owns a lot of factories through England, and so he's like upstart because his family is like a made man, basically. And so he moves in, and he wants to make like a final dig to the ton by marrying a lady. And so he's going to marry one of Needham's daughter, or I mean one of the Bellamy sisters, and the first one in line would be the oldest. But Phoebe doesn't want her sister to have to marry him, and so she basically like volunteers as tribute, thinks it's just gonna be like the biggest sacrifice, and her and him have these like sparring rounds, like verbally just go at it, and he is intrigued by her mind and attracted by her body, and he's like, you know what, you don't want me to marry your sister? Okay, I won't marry your sister. In fact, I won't marry any of your sisters, but I'll marry you. It's you or it's nobody. And so he kind of like traps her into this, and of course her parents they've said all these horrible things about him, and now they're like, oh, and he's your husband and he's saving us, but we hate him because he's saving us. And it's just this very like uncomfortable situation. But when she will be moving in, he has a bastard daughter, and as well as his mistress lives in his home. Not currently his mistress. They have not been together in a long time, but she's dying of consumption. And so he cares about this woman as the mother of his child. And so he has her living in a wing of his home. And so that even causes more scandal. And so that's where I kind of said like the Jane Eyre part of it, even though she's not hidden, and she's a very nice woman, but she is dying. And that's a thing that like Phoebe, who is young, this is also an age gap thing. She's only like 18. You know, is this woman a threat to me? Do I even care if she is? Do I even love this man? Like, is it insulting that his mistress is living with him? Like, these things that like the ton is telling her that she should feel that is disrespectful to her. Like, what does she feel about it? And they have a very like passionate love. But there's also, there's a lot, and I'm very excited for more books in this series. Hyacinth is the next one, and that heroine is a gambler, and I'm excited for that one. So I highly recommend. I really love Minerva Spencer, and I thought this book was just a lot of things that I love all in one. We gotta keep it moving. There's a Matter of Temptation by Stacey Reed. This was her newest book. I think this one is just kind of a standalone, but this one is about Wilhelmina, and she goes to face Simon Lofton in a duel in place of her brother. So her brother gets into trouble and is supposed to duel Simon, and she's a better dueler than her brother, so she goes in his place. And then Simon is looking for a secretary, and so he agrees to work, he agrees to take her on for being his secretary. Because he's actually trying to push some bills through the House that are very like reform. Like, he's a very forward-thinking man quite a bit. So yeah, I really loved these two. I loved when things got steamy between these two. I loved their banter. It's very kind of like Grumpy Sunshine, as well as like she doesn't put up with his gruffness. And I like that he does some very swoony things for her as well. It was adorable. Another one of my favorite books this year, historicals, was A Daring Pursuit by Kate Bateman. This is another one I've talked about many times. We also did a Rake Appreciation Society for this one. This is book 2 in the Ruthless Rival series, and this one is Karis Davies and Tristan Montgomery. And so Tristan is an architect, and he's always kind of had this like sparring with Karis. I mean, all the Montgomerys and the Davies do, ruthless rivals. And Karis is a ruined woman, but she's been keeping it a secret, and she's being blackmailed. And she's being blackmailed by a man that she had given her virginity to, because she thought she loved him, and now he is blackmailing her for money. And like, she has some of her own money, but not a lot of it, and he is like squeezing her dry. And when Tristan overhears it, him and her have like a back and forth about it, and it ends up coming up how like she is not a mistress of this guy. Like, she thinks sex isn't great, and he's like, lady, I don't know who you've been having sex with, but you should let me do it with you. And so they end up being at a house party, because in the first book their siblings got married, and so now they're like forced to be around each other more. And so they're at this house party, and like for the duration of the house party they are going to like have a fling. And of course they're falling in love. She also loves animals. She has like a menagerie, and I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I love this book. I thought her and Tristan were so great together. I think even highlighted a bunch of stuff in this one when I reread it, because I just loved the two of them today. I just loved the two of them together. Anyway. Okay, and then the last one I want to mention, this is actually a Viking romance, and this one is very dark and heavy, so just want to put that out. It also doesn't have the best cover. So this is God's Eye by Susan Finetti. This has a shield maiden, who, I mean, I didn't even write down her names, I'm sorry, but it's a shield maiden who actually fights for like a Viking lord. And then there's our hero who, like, their two groups are kind of tentatively allies. They're not normally allies, but like they are right now. And she ends up saving his life, where he actually had like, okay, she saved his life when they were children, and he was getting like beaten by his father, I think, and she like saves him. And then when they're grown up and they're raiding together, she like saves him again, and like he gets injured, like then saving her, so all these things. And then he thinks that she's beautiful, and he's never forgot her from when they were kids, and he wants to be with her, and she really doesn't want to be with anybody. She's like, I just want to be a warrior. I don't want to mess with being in love. And he's like, girl, I want to be in love with you. Let's be together. But they go through a lot of heartbreak. There is loss of a pregnancy. There is gore and violence, and there's a lot of assault. Like, even from people who are like supposed to be like our heroes. So not from the direct hero, we don't see this, but when the Vikings go raiding, they take the women and they will rape them. And so we see that happening in here. It's not like graphically written, but like it's happening. So know that. But this was a gut-wrenching ride to go on with these two, and it makes the HEA at the end so powerful. Like, it makes it so powerful. It's great. So, all right, there you go. Those are my favorite historicals of 2022. Let me know if you've read some of these or which ones you're intrigued to try. Leave me a heart down below if you made it to the end. Like this video, interact with it. Give me some interactions here. If you're interested in supporting what I do here, I do have links down below. I do this full time, so definitely check that out if you want. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!